So help us. We've been in, we call it a tech wreck, a chip wreck. What would you do? Is this a buying opportunity?
Yeah, I think it's a buying opportunity. This 90-day reprieve, essentially, with Huawei, is essentially going to allow Huawei is going to aggressively build inventory over that 90-day period. And so that's going to basically translate to more orders for semiconductor components, whether that's memory, whether that's RF, whether that's processors.
Because Huawei's just going to buy a ton of it to stock up?
Yes. And so a lot of the demand in Q3 and Q4 is going to get pulled into Q2 and partial Q3. So you're going to see upside to estimates for Q2 and Q3. So this is going to be a little bit of a relief rally you're going to see in the chip stocks.
Okay.
We actually think the Huawei issue is more of a negotiating ploy and negotiating tactic to an ultimate trade resolution in China. We think it's more of a temporary ban. We think it's similar to what happened with ZTE, where there was a ban of ZTE that lasted about 3 months.
Right.
ZTE was affected materially, but ultimately it got resolved.
Do you believe Huawei's CEO when he says, A, he's got an operating system that he can build enough chips to replace the U.S. chips 12 months out from now?
No, I don't believe that at all. I mean, approximately, they spend about $70 billion procuring components. About 11 to 12 billion of that is related to U.S. So the Huawei U.S. supply chain is big, it's deep. It ranges from the handsets, it ranges from the infrastructure. And Huawei is the #1 handset vendor in China. It's 60% of the entire network in China. And they're largely dependent on U.S. components, whether it's optical components, semiconductor components. They have an internal chip for their phone. It's an application processor. But for a lot of the crucial components like memory or RF, they have to rely on the U.S. So any shutdown in Huawei, that would be the worst case scenario, would be massively disruptive.
There's some evidence that there was, if you look at Infire or a bunch of other companies, that Huawei has been building inventory as if they were anticipating what just happened. Is that true?
Oh, for sure. They were building probably for about 6 months' worth of inventory in anticipation. So we had companies in our coverage universe on the foundry side, even before Huawei, this issue was announced, that basically said that they were building in anticipation of that.
So, they've argued that they can't replace FPGAs or x86 or other chips, but this morning we hear maybe they can, with Japanese components, ship base stations again. Like, can they survive without American technology, or can't they survive without?
They can't survive.
They can't.
Yeah, it's very difficult, particularly, again, on the infrastructure. So they're the heart of the network at China Mobile, about 60% of it. If you look at the components related to a 5G base station, you're going to need power management, you're going to need RF, you're going to need processors, you're going to need FPGA. Most of that is developed in the U.S. There's entrenched supply chains, entrenched technologies that have existed for 5G. On the handset side, they have their own application processor, but the memory, the other components, it's still in the U.S.
Can you speak to this in the larger sort of 5G battle that everyone talks about? Is there a U.S. company that you believe is within any kind of shooting distance of what Huawei is doing in terms of the back end? Meaning right now it's Huawei and Ericsson for 5G.
Right.
Is there a U.S. company that you think if Huawei gets slowed down, which is sort of part of what's happening here, or at least maybe part of what the government may be trying to do to them, giving U.S. companies some kind of time to get their act together, who is getting their act together?
So you have to make a separation. The base station vendors, which are Huawei, Ericsson, Nokia, Alcatel-Lucent, they're mostly overseas.
Right.
The operators, the mobile operators, Verizon, AT&T, and Sprint, they're behind China and South Korea with the rollout of 5G for a whole sorts of reasons. There's technological issues.
Spectrum is a big one.
Spectrum is a big one. The last mile is also a big issue as well. So if there's a slowdown with the rollout of China and 5G, it might allow the U.S. mobile operators to catch up. But 5G is going to be a massive upgrade in terms of the network. It's going to allow machine-to-machine communications. You're going to see a lot more IoT devices. It's going to allow enhanced mobile broadband. It's a significant leap from 4G to 5G. It's very, very important technology. So this Huawei issue has to get resolved because 5G infrastructure build-outs are happening, and they're going to continue to happen.
So let me ask you, The question becomes, this is 5G is much more of an industrial application. I mean, Wi-Fi is garbage.
Right.
But if you look at if you put 5G outside of a precision industrial factory in Germany and you have robots talking to each other, I mean, 5G solves a tremendous amount of problems in automating the factory floor.
Right.
If you're a high-end German industrial company, do you want your network to be Huawei from an industrial point of view? Do you not worry about perhaps industrial espionage? Do you want to go with Ericsson? Isn't this a big win for Ericsson?
Yeah, sure.
Even if this settles,
Right.
do you think Huawei will be a core part of European networks?
Probably not, but Huawei doesn't have to go to Europe. They're 60% of China Mobile, China Unicom, China Telecom, and China Mobile, China Unicom, China Telecom are you're talking about a billion people they're going to cover. So they don't necessarily have to be exposed to Europe.
You believe that Huawei is not going to be exposed to Europe? You don't believe that Huawei is basically running Europe right now?
No, I think that the idea of this espionage, I think is I'm skeptical of that type of claim. I think that Ericsson is going to benefit as a result of this conflict, but ultimately the rollout to 5G, whether it's in Europe or in China or in the U.S., is going to benefit all the base station vendors, including Huawei, including Ericsson. Right. So I don't necessarily see,
Raj, your last name is Gill for people on the radio, or I mean, your kids aren't even going to know you're on today.
Yeah, Raj Gill. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you actually have a last name. It's
I
Gill.
do.
Okay. Excellent. Just want to get that in there so people will know you're actually on.
Yes.